From Anshe Sfard Beth El Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of the Migdal Bavel, the Tower of Bavel. What exactly was the problem with the Tower of Bavel? If we look in the verses, it seems very innocent. Everyone was speaking Safa Achat, everyone spoke the same language. It's very machadim, people were a few words. They traveled, they went into a valley. They said, let's make some bricks, and let's build a city. Indeed, a tall city. Its head will be in the sky. We'll make a name for ourselves. Doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that. They were afraid they'd be spread out on the whole land. They were trying to consolidate. God came to see what was wrong. And indeed, He spread them out over the entire land. What exactly was the problem? What was the great sin that required God's intervention? And this is known as the Dor HaFlaga, this generation which was spread out throughout the entire world, this generation which was somehow so decrepit that they are placed in one sentence with the Dor HaMabul, the generation of the flood, and the generation, the Dor HaFlaga, the generation of the Tower of Bavel. What was the crime of the Tower of Bavel? The Gemara in Sanhedrin says that when they said they wanted to make for themselves a name, there are various possibilities as to what they were trying to do. One idea is that we're going to go up to the heavens and we'll sit there. We too will be in heaven. There was some sort of challenge to God, that they wanted to be also like a God. Rashi accepts the approach mentioned in the Gemara there, that they wanted to make a war against God. It was a battle against God and going up to God. And finally, the third interpretation in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Tet, page 109, is that they wanted to go up and worship idols. They wanted to go up and see certain idolatrous figures up in heaven. This notion is a very midrashic notion and three real distinct possibilities. But we have other options as well. Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, a medieval Spanish exile, says that they were building just to build. Indeed, there is no purpose that's outlined here in the Torah. Indeed, they just wanted to build a tower for no other purpose. It's technology for technology's sake. And this too is dangerous. When your whole life is dedicated to a building which has no other and no greater purpose, this too is dangerous. Rashi mentions something just in a few words which tells us quite a bit. Rashi says, Pen nafutz, we're afraid that we may land out, spreading out over the land. Rashi says, Shelo yavi aleinu shum makah lafitzenu mikan. What the desire of these people was that there should be no plague that should be able to affect them, to spread them out from there. They did not want to be vulnerable to any more floods. They did not want to be vulnerable ever again. This idea that somehow we can remove our human vulnerability, that somehow we don't need God, we don't need the protection of God, we will now isolate ourselves in such a way that we will be immune to all the forces of nature. We won't need to pray to God anymore for anything. This is a very dangerous concept, says Rashi. Rashbam, followed by the Radak as well, take an approach that it's a violation, as we mentioned in another webcast. It's a violation of a basic principle of what we're all about. Our job is umil'u et haaretz. We're supposed to fill the land, to conquer the desert and the Adirondacks and the northernmost regions and reaches. But these people wanted to stay in one place. They in fact, in doing so, had created the opposite of Rashi's effect. They create greater vulnerability. Because if there's a plague in one place, if there's a famine in one place, all of humanity is wiped out. But God says, Umil'u et haaretz, fill the entire land, so that indeed the human race will not be vulnerable. These people were trying to create a situation in which the entire human race would be at stake. God says, fill the land, spread out throughout the world. But finally, it's another interpretation, which is a modern interpretation, which is one which I heard from my teacher, Rabbi Yaakov Meidan, of Yeshivat Har Etzion years ago. And that is that he notices that this is not merely the Tower of Bavel. That's a misnomer. If you look, it says there that they wanted to build, They wanted to build a city and a migdal and a tower which would reach to heaven. And God came down to see the ear, the city, and the migdal and the tower. And finally, vayachtalu livnot ha'ir, because they were punished, they stopped to build the city. Indeed, what they were trying to do here was to create the very first city. And cities have their own problems. In a city, everyone lives by themselves. We don't notice others as much. In a city, there are always some people who fall through the cracks, who live at the city gates, who beg for $1 or $2. In the city, there are always some people who have no identity, faceless people, homeless people. This is the danger of a city. Yes, there can be cities. Yes, there can be beautiful cities. Jerusalem, the ideal city. But this was the first model of a decrepit city, an immoral city, a city where the values of the home farm, values of more earthy kind of a community were lost. This is one of the great dangers of the Tower of Bavel. So we have then various suggestions. Was it a theological problem? Was this a rebellion against God in the most fundamental sense? The notion that I am God, I am powerful, I am great, I am tall, and not God. Was it a matter of trying to remove our sense of the protection of God, the sense of our connection with God, the sense that we need God, the sense of our vulnerability? Was it a problem of creating vulnerability, of creating a situation in which humanity could be wiped out in 1 second? We, the Jewish people, have always been spread out throughout the entire world since our exile. And that has created the almost impossibility of destroying us all because we're so spread out. So too with humanity. We need to be spread out. Or was it the notion that building can never be an end in its own? Technology is not an end in its own. You can't just boast that your country is great at technology. Technology for what purpose? Is it enhancing life or is it ruining life? And finally, what is the nature of your cities? What kind of cities do we create? We create Ir Elohim, a city of God? Or would you create a city whose sole purpose is to build, to conquer, to be powerful, to step on those beneath you so that you can get to the top? These are the challenges. These are the ideas which are presented in the Migdal Bavel. Perhaps it's not one problem with Migdal Bavel, with the Tower of Bavel. Perhaps the Migdal Bavel is exemplary of all the different problems that a person can face. The sense of that there is no God, the sense that the city has no responsibility for its individuals, the sense that technology is just for itself, and the sense that we are not vulnerable and do not live under divine protection. Our job is to take the opposite approach, to build cities for God, to create possibilities where we will where the human being will not be vulnerable. Our job is to create a situation in which the human being realizes that despite our great ability to build, we are not God. Thank you for joining us today at the Anshe Sfar Beth El congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank Jason Lefkowitz for making this presentation possible. And I want to thank you for joining us. You can always feel free to email me at rabbijmf@gmail.com. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.